Welcome back to HR Hacks and Halos, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on workplace culture, calling out the bad while shining a light on the good. I'm Jivan Dempsey, a HR consultant passionate about transforming the way we work. From confronting toxic bosses to celebrating positive change, this is your space for real talk, actionable insights, and the occasional spark of inspiration. Today, we're tackling a subject that's shaking up the non-profit world, artificial intelligence. AI is changing the way we work, hire, and advocate. But how does it fit within human rights and social justice work? Can technology enhance the missions of charities, or does it pose ethical risks we need to navigate carefully? To explore this, I'm joined by Paul Smith and Jack Jarrett from Amnesty International, an organisation at the forefront of fighting for human rights. Together, we'll unpack how AI is shaping HR in the non-profit sector, the ethical dilemmas of using AI in human rights advocacy, AI's role in recruitment, onboarding, and workforce planning, and why collaboration among non-profits is key to leveraging technology responsibly. AI presents both fear and opportunity in recruitment and advocacy. So how do we strike the right balance? Stay tuned for a fascinating conversation that will challenge how you think about AI and its role in the future of work. So let's get into it. So hello and welcome to the podcast. So I've got two really exciting guests to introduce you to today. I have Paul Smith, who is the CIO of Amnesty International here in the UK. And I've also got Jack Jarrett, who is the resourcing advisor from Amnesty International again here in the UK. Welcome to both of you guys. It's lovely to have you here. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Jim. And great to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. It's a pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. All right. So today we're going to talk very much about AI and technology. And because you guys are both from the charity space, obviously Amnesty is a big name in the charity and the not-for-profit sector. The whole topic of AI and technology is really fascinating for me because of how it applies within the space that you guys kind of reside in, that human rights, in that data, and in that kind of advocacy space. So Paul, can I please, first of all, talk to you about the role that tech plays in helping charities achieve their missions, particularly through in the human rights space?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big question, I think. But in the modern day and age, I think business strategy is technology strategy, right? I mean, there are organizations that have been around for quite some time that are having to adopt digital and data as a way of thinking. And there are new organizations that are born digital. I think the same applies in the non-profit space. So particularly when you're thinking about an organization's value chain and the way it manages information through that value chain, or how it converses with its customers or supporters, or how it has an effect and measures its effect, there's opportunity for technology and data and digital at every step. And it's no different in the non-profit space. I think the only potential differentiator is the pace at which we can move in adoption of these things. Yeah, the funding we have available to pay for the technology, and actually maybe also some of our values and missions, which may go against and create barriers into which tech we can adopt and how.
Yeah. So you're not necessarily seeing it as a barrier as such. That it may be that there's a slower pace when it comes to kind of getting the investment in terms of technology. But in terms of your space in human rights, you're not necessarily seeing tech as an issue here then.
I think that in the human rights space itself, I think there are still risks around technology. I mean, if you look at some of the audiences that Amnesty serves, we still consider concerned around digital divides, around climate change, around surveillance. All these sorts of things are exaggerated and enabled through technology and data. So there is a HR lens of it. And of course, there's a cybersecurity aspect of it too, both internally for employees, but also externally from our supporters and people at risk. So I think it has a role to play in every area, I think, from an opportunity and a risk perspective as well. I think I'd say to that.
Yeah. And I like that. So I think what we'll be doing is I'm really keen to unpack that with you, but let's just keep going in terms of just the general kind of the broader kind of issues that we have around technology. How do you, in your role as CIO, how do you balance the investments and obviously using what is very finite resources in your space to the allocation of things like technology and other investments versus frontline activities?
I think so. It's a question of prioritization, right? And a question of culture. So the first response to that is you have to remember the money's not your own. and it's finite, and there's no guarantee of more.
Yeah.
And I think you have to have a mentality of looking after the penny so that the pens look after themselves in the non-profit space.
Yeah.
Following that, I think really understanding and have clarity of mission and having a golden thread between what you do and how you do it and when you do it helps you to prioritize the right thing, the right time, the right way. But also a really clear communication channel with our employees and those we serve in terms of what is impactful to them, where are they seeing friction, where are they seeing pain, where are they seeing opportunity. All these things come into the melting pot of prioritization, really, and it's a good sort of, we as a business conversation around the table to agree that the framework by which we prioritize, and then the answer is what the answer is. It's the same thing, who's that shout loudest.
Yeah. And so how do you balance that then in terms of those that are shouting the loudest versus other needs that you may have within your space?
Let's do that framework. So if we agree, let's say that there are 7 questions we always ask of new opportunities or new risks to say, how does it move our strategy? How does it address our strategic risk? How does it grow our organization? Whatever your questions may be, and you apply a score to that thing, it becomes quite simple to say, once you've agreed those questions and that scoring framework, the highest ranked answer is the highest ranked answer.
Yeah,
and it's fair and it's transparent, and that's just good governance in my view.
Yeah. And does that include then the external kind of parties? So for example, donors and beneficiaries and volunteers, to what extent are their voices also part of that listening that you have to do?
I think opportunity can come from anywhere, right? I think if you're having the right conversations in terms of what's working and what's not working, and it could even be as simple as responding to a new demographic that the organisation is trying to reach, which generates a new need. Like, triggers and need can come from anywhere. The bottom line is you've got to have an avenue to have those conversations, and you've got to have a channel by which you can sense for those things.
Yeah.
But I think, the world of technology doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's, it exists in an economical climate, in a risk climate, in a funding climate. So you have to have that pestle analysis, for want of a better phrase, around technology, so you understand the full environment in which you're operating and where opportunities and risk can come from.
Yeah. I'm glad you're saying that, actually, because I've in a way, I'm kind of challenging my own kind of underlying ethos of some of my questions, because ultimately every business has a finite resource, doesn't it? It's not just a charity space and the not-for-profit that has a finite resource here, because ultimately it's about how much investment can you make? How much money can you borrow? How much sales is coming in terms of revenue that you can actually put into that space of technology and investment and the kind of the broader kind of monies that need to be spent in order to be able to take your business forward. Everyone is having to cope with those challenges. So actually it's a misnomer to think that charities have got it better or worse than any other business.
I think there's a sliding scale. I think, like you say, if you remember, charity money, as I say, isn't our own. Whereas if you're working in PE or you're working in large listed organizations, there are other sources of funding which can be made available through refinancing, through reinvestments, through acquisition. So I think that there are mechanisms available to commercial organizations that aren't necessarily always available to nonprofits. And then there's always the ethical lens. So I think there's a sliding scale there. And I'm also aware there are some very well-funded nonprofits in the world too.
Yeah.
But I think there's potentially more ethical challenge around the nonprofit space in terms of what you can and what you should spend money on, and how much of that pound or cent or euro, whatever your currency of choice is, gets to the front line. I think which is perhaps the same challenge in the commercial space.
Yeah. And do you find that you can sometimes partner up with other not-for-profit or charities to kind of share some of these opportunities or thinking or even funding?
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise, to be honest, in the non-profit space, to find how open other organizations are to sharing knowledge and lessons learned and talking about problems together. I think there's still more opportunity in the non-profit space to formally put the money where the mouth is and, co-invest on shared capabilities, for example. But we do see the non-profit space picking up on common capabilities now through software as a service products, where we all have a base level of capability that we're each customizing in our own way. But I think at the exec level, I think we find a lot more partnership and a lot more communication, a lot more willingness to listen and learn, and be colleagues in a full good space. Don't always see that in the commercial space because of IP, because of, competition and so on.
Yeah, yeah. And is that a fairly new phenomena and very much geared around things like technology investments? Or do you see it on a much wider and broader sort of platform, that sharing and that kind of leveraging with other sort of charities and not-for-profit?
Yeah, I think there's an advent of events now, isn't there, in the technology space through awards and webinars and, social events. And I'm starting to see not just in the non-profit space, but cross-industry CIOs and leadership teams coming together to talk about common challenges and opportunities. And it's surprising how much of that is transferable now as technology and data becomes more of a commodity service.
Yeah.
Your internet, you outsource, your F&O opportunity, ERP, you outsource the software as a service. We're using common platforms, and there are common challenges in terms of the way we manage our employees, the way we manage funding, the way we manage risk. And there's a richness that flows from industry to industry in having those conversations, because it's surprising what's common, and it's surprising what you can learn from a completely different industry.
Yeah.
And that's why I've taken learnings from automotive, from maritime search and rescue, and all these other places that you wouldn't think resonate in a non-profit space for human rights, and they do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Really, really interesting. Thank you. How excited are you, in your opinion, about these AI conversations that are becoming less extreme but more mainstream all of a sudden?
I'm an optimist. I'm sitting on the fence as art of the possible, and I do firmly believe it's a once in a lifetime kind of revelation, this step in technology that we're seeing. And there's been a lot of investment, a lot of work that's gone on for years and years in the background that's brought us to this point where it can be made as accessible as it has. And it's the accessibility that was a defining change for me. All of a sudden, if you have a computer and you have the internet and data, and the skills, you can access something that could be transformational in your life in terms of, law advice, medical advice, how to draft the right email, how to apply for a job, all these things. It's much more than a Google search right now if we're talking generative AI. But AI has been around for a long time now. I think the opportunity is to be able to balance that with the risks it could present to you. I mean, it's still a tool. It can still be weaponized, for good or for bad. I'm excited about the opportunity it has for organizations to power our people, to power our processes, and to create new core competency. But over and above that, the opportunity it has for, let's say, marginalized demographics to close that digital divide. There is still a lingering concern there, because if you don't have those things I mentioned around compute, connect, data to access these tools, you could be further marginalized. And there are a whole raft of risks around these sorts of technology from a human rights perspective, which of course we're concerned about internally. Yeah.
Can you share more?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, we're still learning like any other organizations, but the risks are vast and they're quite deep. It's everything from labor rights violations, environmental impact, censorship for freedom of expressions, data protection and privacy, trustworthiness, bias and discrimination, or even incomplete representation, exploitation of intellectual property, or even premature adoption or undocumented harms. These are all avenues that as a human rights org, actually of any organization, not just human rights, should start to think about. And maybe you can't influence that directly, but you can influence it through your purchasing power, through your conversations with developers and suppliers, and relationships as well, and through sharing knowledge. So there's still a lot of opportunity, but a lot of risk.
Yeah, interesting. All right. So, Jack, if I can turn to you, from your space in terms of the resourcing kind of role that you perform, what are you seeing in the terms of the current state of technology and the investment that you're seeing that you're able to use, and how far are you able to get excited about AI adoption in HR generally?
Well, I think that's a great question, Jivan, and I think technology, AI, especially AI, is reshaping HR across the whole employee life cycle, and which is ultimately going to help us do more with less, whether we be in the not-for-profit space or whether we're in the commercial space, particularly around that employee life cycle and talent attraction and recruitment, for instance. That talent sourcing piece, fed with the right and correct prompts, AI tools can now use data from professional networking sites, social media and job boards to identify and engage with passive candidates. So those candidates who perhaps are not actively looking for a role, but who meet the specific job requirements we're looking for now or in the future, which is enhancing organizations like Amnesty or any other organization, to be honest with you, its ability to effectively pipeline and build a pool of suitable candidates for present and future roles, which again is particularly important given the need for organizations such as Amnesty to identify mission-driven candidates with niche skill sets, which has always been a bit of a challenge. But having that tool, having that kind of ability to constantly pull those candidates in the background is a real game changer in that instance as well. So that's one key area I'm finding that AI has been really valuable in as well. And I guess more broadly, not so much the not-for-profit sector, though I've seen a couple of not-for-profits trying it. It is on the onboarding side as well, is testing AI chatbots. A former colleague in my network has built a chatbot which allows his team to have give 24-hour assistance to new starters. So answering those frequently answered questions, so easing that integration into the business, which ultimately helps ensure people stay and we get more value for money out of people who join. So that's one really exciting piece that I'm really keen to explore in the coming years, even in the not-for-profit space, as we build our ability to build those GPTs, I should say. So I think that's going to be a really active and important piece. But I think one of the key things that Paul kind of alluded to, both, which is really important in the not-for-profit sector, is looking at kind of those kind of the privacy concerns with AI as well for when you purchase a project or when you're looking to use AI, because obviously each package or each AI tool comes with different levels of privacy. It's, different data and privacy concerns and so forth about how it's using the data, how it's analyzing the data as well. So as an organization, as a resourcing function or as an IT function, it's really understanding how is the data going to be used and what is that organization's risk tolerance as well, and understanding that as well before we can actually implement it as well. So that's one key thing as well that I'm kind of looking at as well when we're looking to adopt new pieces of AI technology.
Yeah. So can you tell me more about that? How do you do that? How do you make that assessment when you're reviewing different pieces of software?
No, that makes total sense. And again, this is something we kind of be doing in tandem with Paul's team as well. It's just understanding, is really working with the IT team to say, this is how the data is going to be used. What is the threshold of the organization for using for the data to be used in this way? And does it align ultimately with our mission and values? And if it doesn't, then it's something we can't use. So perhaps in the not-for-profit space, when we're looking at new tools, we have to be extra vigilant. So yes, we got all of these exciting new AI opportunities, but it's balancing that with the potential kind of privacy concerns and so forth that might perhaps compromise our mission. So working very much in tandem with the IT team to be able to understand, does this meet the threshold? Does it not? And again, Paul, you may be able to allude a bit more on how we do that. But that's one of the key challenges, I think, as well as being very excited about these AI tools. Yes, it can make all this difference, but you're having to tamper that, particularly in the not-for-profit space, with the potential privacy concerns and how that data is going to be used before we can even look to use the product.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm hearing is that you do see AI very much as a game changer in the HR space.
Absolutely. I think it's essentially going to allow us to do more with less, particularly when you're working in the not-for-profit space and you might have perhaps those leaner HR teams to be able to use AI to kind of automate processes, whether that's start using AI prompts to develop a job description from the start and then editing it through to automating interview processes as well in terms of setting up interviews and so forth. Being able to have that there means that an HR function, whether that be the resourcing side of it or the HR business side as well, can really focus on those people-centric parts, the real value-adding parts to the business as well. It was interesting. Paul and I were reviewing a report a couple of days ago on what skills are not going to be replaced by AI. We're focused very much on, yes, this is what AI is replacing, but what are those key things it's not going to? And one of the key things that have been identified in this report was conflict resolution. That's an area it doesn't see AI completely taking over and so forth. And that empathetic side and that networking side, all key aspects of HR. So having AI kind of automate all these other bits of processes really allows us then to focus on those commercial value adds to the business where we can have real impact, where perhaps before, we may have been, say bogged down is probably the wrong word, but having to take on a lot of administrative pieces of work as well.
Yeah. That's an interesting take, actually. And I'll ask the question of both of you because I'm quite interested in that. With the speed at which machines are learning, could you not see a time when actually, there is that kind of empathy beginning to come through because it's learning all of the time. And even in the HR space and all of the different kind of nuances that we have and the issues and the scenarios that people present, that employees present, machine learning is constantly kind of learning those scenarios. And there'll come a time when they're so full of this information. Actually, it does have the relevant answers back. Could you see a scenario or could you see a time when actually that might actually be possible? Or is this just science fiction still? Paul, let me ask you first. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic, and I've got quite a controversial opinion on this, Jivan. So I'm, personal opinion.
I'm so glad you've got a controversial view on it.
I think we as humans have inflated opinions of ourselves. I think we are machines. We need to remember that we are machines. We're a product of what we learn, what we sense, what we've been told. I don't think technology is any different. So if you match the ability of technology to learn through knowledge banks, through what it can see and hear, because it can do that too these days, and the fact it can operate at speed and a scale that humans can't, I think there absolutely is a point where it'll be better at this stuff than we are, because it learns in all the same ways, theoretically.
Yeah.
What we have to do is make sure all those guardrails are there, as I said earlier, in terms of the biases and the trustworthiness and some of those things that can come through. But in terms of ability, I think I have the ability to surpass humans. That's a controversial opinion, but I'm extrapolating what I'm seeing.
Yeah, no, I understand. How about you, Jack? What's your view on that?
Paul's totally right, and I kind of echo Paul's view. So I use a common AI chatbot every morning, and I kind of use it as a way to kind of boost myself up. So I have a conversation with it every morning to say, look, this is what I've got for the day. Can you help me prioritize these tasks based on this, that, and that? This, that, and the other. And it then kind of provides me with kind of key tasks for the day. Obviously, I edit and so forth. But it's learning all the time, and it speaks more like me every day and the mannerisms I have. So I feel that, yes, exactly as Paul said, it really is developing at pace, and you can see that it's learning all the time. And it's going to be perhaps there is a time when it could do everything as quickly, as a human could do, if not better, very quick. Very quickly, which is quite scary.
Indeed. And I like that example. If you're asking it at the moment to prioritize your, everything that you need to do over the day, sooner or later, it will just give you that even without asking. So it'll you'll log in and it's there already without you even needing to ask the machine any longer.
Absolutely. It even helps. I've got it has a pump up soundtracks for me. And it's learned off of that, and it's providing different 80s soundtracks and so forth that really gets them pumped for the day, but it's learning all the time. So perhaps there's going to be a chat GBT for Jack Jarrett soon, just quite scary.
It's the speed though, isn't it? I mean, I saw someone share on social media not too long ago. Someone saw one of these Copilot power prompts, and it was something along the lines of analyze all my historical emails, come up with a style for me, tell me where I'm strong, tell me where I'll be, give me a personal development plan, recommend some courses. And it was almost instant. Can you imagine the effort it would take to do that for yourself, even working with consultants? It's quite scary. So, fearful, optimistic, I think, is the opportunity there, Jivan.
Yeah, I think I share that fear. I was talking to a colleague yesterday, and he was kind of saying, well, actually, there'll come a time when actually passwords and things are completely superfluous, because even with the strings, when they're doing a suggested password for you, the strings are getting longer and longer and more random. But with the speed at which now computers are kind of like, the huge, the analytic power behind it, there'll come a time when actually passwords are suddenly useless, because the machine will be able to just go through all of the combinations so fast. And if you think about how clever scammers are and how clever people putting their brains into how to rip people off, they'll be able to use all of that very, very fast. And so, there'll come a time when I think passwords will be completely pointless. Even face recognition and all that, computers can actually recreate them. So I wonder how things are going to really end up, and how we're going to be able to keep data and ourselves and privacy kind of very much at the forefront, when actually I think we're kind of giving it up almost on a daily basis without us even knowing.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think there's the whole topic in itself there to unpack, isn't there, around cryptography and future cryptography. But even today, we're aware of nefarious actors storing information today that they can't access, they can't decrypt. But as soon as quantum computing is accessible, it will be accessible. So they're getting that stuff, they're harvesting that stuff even today for a point in future. Well, there is a question about whether it will still be relevant and valuable at that point in future, but it won't be long. But experts in the field will tell you there's still the more combinations you can have, the better. And there's defense in depth is still the answer. But something you have, something you know, and something you are, there's still opportunities around some of that. But what a topic to unpack. That's for another day, probably.
I think that is for another day, and I will come back to you on that just to talk about quantum computing, because actually it's quite a fascinating area. And if we can have a spin within how does that actually, what does that mean for us in HR, then even better. But we'll park that one. You're on. So just going back to Jack, in terms of, I sense the excitement and I sense how you're actually using it. What do you see as the potential pitfalls of AI and the use of what you're seeing and what you're using within the recruitment processes generally?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. But for me, I guess the real focus on AI at the moment, for me, looking at it from in a not-for-profit recruitment team, is automating and handling those routine tasks. So say paperwork, setting up interviews and so forth. So it really allows us as recruiters to spend time headhunting and so forth. So using all of that, using all the AI to help us kind of attract the best candidates straight away, and then really sell the organization from the beginning. So using the AI to help us identify the candidates, but then balancing that AI interaction with the human touch to be able to sell the organization and say, look, as an organization, this is what we bring to the table. This is why we want you to join. So for me, it's very much being able to sell the organization, because as a not-for-profit, being able to identify those candidates, I should say, and sell the organization is one of the key things that enablers I think that AI is going to bring to the table for us as a recruitment team, because we can spend the time then on getting those candidates through the door. As a non-for-profit organization, we don't always have the highest remuneration packages. So we're really looking and really working hard to identify those mission intrinsically driven candidates, which isn't always easy to find. So when we find them, we really need to spend time in building that relationship, building that rapport. So we can then bring them into the organization. And then also another key area is data utilization as well. So fed with the correct prompts, AI can develop data analysis and so forth that allows us to go to the table in meetings and say, look, we can see at the moment a key trend in the hiring process is this. This is an area we need to improve. But it provides real-time data for us to be able to go to the table and say these things. Quite often, we have a small amount of data and can say, in this instance, this is the case. But be able to say across the board, the data is saying this in real time, and be able to show that to key stakeholders such as Paul, for instance, allows us to have a bigger seat at the table and ultimately allows us to kind of add more value to the business. So just to summarize, one, it's in terms of automating those processes, allowing us then to spend more time on the value add in bringing in top talent into the business, balancing AI with the human side as well. And then also on the data analysis side, being able to provide instant data around certain issues to hiring managers such as Paul. For instance, I'm supporting a startup at the moment, and we managed to use a lot of data to be able to say, we predict the hiring trends for this type of role is going to be this over the next 12 months. These are what we expect the salary bands to be. And these are the type of candidates and profiles that fits these salary bands. We were able to come up with that very quickly and provide that to the founders. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And those are kind of some of the key areas I see.
Yeah. And I like that as an analogy, actually, because workforce planning was always difficult in terms of kind of like looking ahead, what's happening on the landscape, etc. But actually through AI, it does make some of those questions and those answers come much more easier to navigate and to get. But what about some of the pitfalls? What about some of the disadvantages? Because I know that there's an awful lot of sort of pushback with regards to diversity and inclusion. And does AI actually give a level playing field? Obviously, human beings, we are fallible, but does AI actually just replicate those fallibilities through the recruitment processes? Or do you think it's actually even things out? And any other kind of issues that you might see through recruitment that might actually disadvantage some groups over others?
No, that's a great question. And I think that's very much down to the organization from the beginning. And I've seen some really good examples of this and some not so good examples. So firstly, an organization needs to establish what its policy is on AI. And then it needs to be able to then say to all the candidates consistently, this is good use of AI, i.e., for example, researching an organization, researching what the type of interview questions could be. And these are the bad use, this is what we consider as an organization, bad uses of AI, i.e. during an interview typing into AI, a chatbot, the interview questions to get answers. So that's the first starting point with AI, I think, as a HR function, as a resourcing function, is to identify what the AI policy is and then communicate to candidates, this is what good use is, this is what bad use is in our organization. And of course, every organization is going to be different, whether they be mission driven or very much financially led. So that needs to be the key piece, because informing candidates from the offset, this is what we consider good use, this is what we consider bad use, provides a fairer playing field as to what we anticipate. But I think to answer your question, I think that AI provides a lot of opportunity for a lot of candidates. For instance, I'm dyslexic, and when I was reading through some of the job descriptions, they can be quite cumbersome. Right? What does that mean? What does that acronym mean? But you can feed AI with prompts to say, please write this in an accessible way. So that can be done. So from a candidate side, it can be more accessible. But you can also do that from a recruitment standpoint as well, to write a job description and a job advert in a way that is accessible, as opposed to perhaps assuming people know what an acronym means or assuming people know what this or that means. That's just some key ways I think that AI, is going to improve the recruitment side of things, and how it needs to be portrayed externally to make it a better it a better process.
Yeah, understand. Paul, perhaps if I turn to you now, what are you what sort of feedback, or what are the potential pitfalls that you're seeing or hearing from your stakeholders, external parties, etc., about the adoption of things like AI?
Yeah, I think there's some good points still to raise, and as you found, I spoke earlier about all these risks that are still out there and need to be addressed and need to be programmed into an organization's thinking in terms of what are the repercussions, how they're going to mitigate it or manage those things. Well, there's a couple of areas that I care deeply about. The first is, like any technology or process or person, actually, rubbish in, rubbish out, right? If you teach me the wrong things, ask me the wrong questions, you're not going to get the answer you want, even as an individual. And I think that is important even with these technologies. So right tool for the job, in the right context, provided the right information and ask the right question. Yeah. Those sorts of things you should care about. I think secondly, there are varying levels of risk to where you use these tools. And depending on your level of comfort with that risk, there are some things that you may completely automate and be happy to take the answer verbatim. There are some that you're going to want a human in the loop on. And human in the loop is still a concept that we care about as an organization, I think, that we'll still use as we tread cautiously into this place. We use these tools, but we always want to check it. We always want to make sure we're happy with the output, not to use things blindly. I think we need to have the ability to feed back into these models, right? So to tell it, if given all this fantastic input, did it still hit the mark or not with an output? If not, let it know so it can learn. It has to be that feedback, that mechanism. Yeah. And the transparency even in having arrived at the conclusion and the answer that it did. So you can understand to earlier points if it's being biased in a way it shouldn't be. But I think there's an opportunity and a risk also in terms of how you use these things to engage with audiences for recruitment, because whilst it can be very specific in an area to target the kinds of people you want in the kinds of areas, the kinds of demographics, kinds of skill sets, that by its nature is exclusive to opportunity for people you hadn't considered who could present value to the organization. Yeah. So I think you have to be mindful of being too personal with these targeted ads, targeted role profiles. You have to bear that in mind. Expanding on the bias thing, because it's a machine, because it's a technology, it can also be programmed to always consider X, Y, and Z question, X, Y, and Z perspective. It can ask itself the question, have you considered marginalized communities? Is this language gender neutral? Would it be appropriate, for X, Y, or Z person to read this in the way that we've presented it? You can program those challenges in an adversarial way. So I think there's a lot of risk and opportunity across those areas that I'd probably call out.
Yeah. So actually re-challenging the technology itself to say, how objective is this answer? Or to really, to help the technology almost question itself and it's learning and will give you better answers each and every time.
Yeah, there's actually there's a whole theme around that. They're called general adversarial networks. Yeah. So for whenever you've got a process like a generative artificial intelligence doing something, you have an equivalent process where you just govern it. Did you do this? Did you do that? Is that all? So it almost works in a yin and yang kind of way. And I think that's an interesting area to watch develop, because that's how we can get technology to govern technology, which I think is quite fascinating.
And is that available now, Paul, or is that coming downstream?
Yeah, it is. And it's also worth mentioning, it's the only thing that can operate at the speed and scale of generative AI is an adversarial generative AI.
Yeah, yeah. So almost like watching the two sides coming together, and the conclusion will be a much, much better version of it, because both sides are
either to enrich the way we govern or enrich the output of whatever it is we're using for the output. Yeah, indeed. I think it's fascinating, but no human can do that at the speed of the scale that's going to be necessary.
Yeah. How much credence are you giving to some of the kind of the broader kind of pitfalls that people are now saying about AI? For example, it's going to be bad for the climate, the amount of electricity usage, the huge data centers. To what extent is that actually correct?
It's a live conversation, even internally here. I mean, I posted internally on one of our networks just yesterday, actually, on the intranet. I think I provided a quote, something like, I think the production of 1,000 NOA images is the equivalent of driving a gas-powered car 4 miles, based on the statistics this report gave us. Yeah. So there's always that climate concern, I think. But there's a couple of nuances in this, in that these technologies are running regardless. they can also help you to find efficiencies and offset climate opportunities within your organization through the efficiencies it finds. It will prevent you doing something that would otherwise expend carbon, for example, or generate negative environmental impact. And actually, we've seen from A&D in just the last couple of weeks, these supercomputers that fit in the palm of your hand there for $3,000. So it's not a big data center you're needing to use. It's the equivalent of a high-powered PC or a laptop. So, technology advancement is also going to be more efficient, more effective, smaller, more accessible. So I think whilst it's an issue today, there is a general climate challenge around efficiency and effectiveness and climate, control, which I think will manifest itself through this as well, because as long as there's demand for it, there'll be a reason to do something about it.
Indeed. Yeah. There has to be a demand. There has to be, and a solution will emerge, and hopefully sooner rather than later. Jack, just going back to you just for a moment then, what excites you the most about the potential of AI in your space?
I think it's a great question. I think for me, I think the potential of it is going to be very much on that onboarding piece for me. And I know it can kind of sound boring, and I know I've already spoken about it before, but when you get candidates into an organization, the key thing is those first 3 months, right? Making sure that they're onboarded properly. So having those chatbots available that are able to provide 24-hour assistance to a new hire. So for instance, when my friend joined the organization, he was using this chatbot, and he said, he was like, oh, what should I wear on my first day? Because he hadn't messaged his boss, and he messaged the chatbot, and it was able to say, on your first day, you should wear smart casual. But this means this, and that, and that organization. So having that kind of constant back and forth available with a chatbot, I think is going to be really important to get people engaged and wanting to stay at the organization and getting people up to speed as well. Because the chatbot extends beyond just those basic frequently asked questions to providing onboarding training and so forth. So people can get up to speed very quickly, and that allows them to become more efficient. So I think that's one area for me that's really exciting as an HR professional as well.
Yeah.
As I said before, we've all had bad experiences of onboarding, but if we can have a chatbot that's going to make a consistent processes out as well, so everyone goes through that same onboarding process, I think is going to be really crucial, I think. Brilliant. As well. So that's one kind of key thing. Yeah. And then I think final one as well is that predictive workforce analytics, as I've spoken to before, being able to feed an AI with historical data and future plans, future goals, future ambitions of an organization, and it be able to predict what those hiring needs are going to be for, say, Paul's team in IT, what those key skill sets are going to require beyond just the job description is going to be pivotal to for recruitment and HR to be able to add value to business. That's one of the key things. And one of the other areas that I wanted to really emphasize is, and I think that Paul's done really well at, is we're saying a lot about, AI is going to be great at this, AI is going to be great at that. But I think a lot of the success of AI and its adoption is going to be around building that digital culture from the beginning. So training staff to embrace tech tools from the beginning, because we've got a workforce at the moment with people working 2 years to 50 years in organizations. So building up that technical competency and the technical confidence from the beginning, and is going to be really crucial for the success of AI, regardless of what tool it is. And I think that's something Paul's done really well at Amnesty, is providing the opportunity for staff to discuss AI, discuss new things that have gone well, discuss things that haven't gone well. Yeah. And we're all learning together. And as a result, I feel much more confident to use all these different AI tools within my own role as well, and kind of talk back about my good experiences of it and also my bad experiences as well. Yeah. So, obviously, we've got all these amazing things to come, but if we don't have those foundations of a strong digital culture in place from the beginning, then I don't think that any of the successes that we want to come from AI will happen.
Yeah. So I sense the excitement that is, in terms of the potential that's going to be coming along through within your space, but also caution, which is that people have to be ready, that you have to have a culture that's going to embrace the technology that's going to be coming along and to remain open-minded. I get that, and I thank you for that. And Paul, what about yourself? What are the kind of trends in technology? We've talked a lot about AI, and I get it, but what are the kind of trends that you feel are going to be coming along the track in the next 5 to 10 years? How are things going to change?
Yeah, I think it's always a great question, is it? Because who saw COVID coming? But I think I'm always excited by X as a service, right? I mean, the things that we all do that can be commoditized, whether it's, access to certain processes, certain services. And I think that they always excite me to see what can become common and then actually how we differentiate ourselves from each other at a technology level. I think particularly talking in this space, I think AI has a capability in its own right in terms of helping you do something you could otherwise not do, or as an assistive capability that might power something else in your organization, like making finance better, making procurement better through speed and decision scale. I think as an enabling or as an assistive capability, I think I'm excited to see where else we bolt this onto. Or what it enables an organisation to do that they previously couldn't. So I think I'm excited about that. I think I'm excited to see the development of AI in the candidate space on this subject in the broker kind of way. We see a lot about application tracking systems and all these sorts of things, and how AI can help the recruiting organisation. But I think there'll be more prevalent where I, as a candidate, you as a candidate, can upload information about me, my CV, my social networks, my likes, my dislikes, persona information, and maybe tools like this broker for me. So they find roles, find organizations that may be for me. And these things are working 24/7 to help me apply to these things, take care of first steps, even submit a CV and a cover letter. So I think it will start to, again, be an assistive technology for the individual as well. But I think more than anything, I'm excited for the increases in, hopefully, accessibility and assistance for individuals. And that's important to me, because I want to be inclusive. An organisation like ours, where inclusivity and diversity is important, we want to allow everyone an opportunity to get to the table, to have conversations in languages that suit them, to ask silly questions in safe spaces, to summarise documents they haven't got the ability to or time to read, 200-page documents or policy documents that may change frequently. So to highly personalise that experience and bring it in touch with the individual that needs to consume the information. Yeah, I think I'm excited for all of that. And it brings the power of the internet to bear almost, doesn't it? Through a lens that's important for you. So, like I say, more than anything, just to see where these things bolt on and how people find new ways to use these things too.
Yeah. And any words of caution?
I think Jack had a great point earlier. I think you've got to focus on making sure you're investing time in your own digital skills. I think if you can invest time in your digital skills, it will unlock other opportunity for you. So make sure you know how to use a computer. Make sure you're aware of these technologies. Make sure you're aware of your value of your own identity data and how to manage your own identity data. Manage cybersecurity as a life skill. I think if you start to invest in some of these common capabilities as an individual, then that would be my word of caution and opportunity, actually, in fact.
Yeah. And would that also be your words of advice then to other charity leaders and technology leaders?
It would. I think, we've touched on some good points already today, but I think, you mentioned it earlier. I think keep talking to each other, to learn from each other. I think is really important. You don't know it all, lose the ego, talk to some people like you. I think that's going to save time and resource and risk, and in the long run, donor money for charities. I think you also mentioned, the opportunity for group purchasing power. Negotiation and collaboration. I think early adoption is always an opportunity, isn't it, to reduce pricing and exchange value for reference use cases, or even shape the direction of products. And I think manage the digital experience, what delivers maximum benefit to your user. That's an existing concern that tech leaders should be thinking about, but education and awareness in that space. I have to give a shout out to the open source community as well, because the more we can co-create together for the benefit of each other, the more we will all, society will benefit, frankly.
Absolutely. And the more we do that, the more we actually understand where some of the pitfalls are coming from. So you can actually bandy together in order to overcome some of those challenges. Absolutely right. Yeah. And Jack, from your perspective, then what's the one sort of piece of advice that you would give to other recruiters or HR people in your space around technology?
It's a great question, Jivan. And, I was having this conversation with some recruiters and some other mission organizations last week. And the key thread we had throughout was let your missions and values guide your tech choices. So select tools that enhance fairness, inclusivity, and candidate experience, ensuring alignment with those organizational causes. And I think one of the big things for me is starting small. There is so much out there, but starting small and prioritizing those high impact areas and really balancing automation with human oversight to maintain that empathy and trust throughout the recruitment lifecycle is important. So that's my key thing, is just being to let your mission and values guide your tech choices when looking at HR systems and automation and how AI can both support HR and also improve it as well.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you both today. It's been really insightful understanding, Jack, from your perspective in terms of how AI and technology generally is kind of helping to shape the role that you do and to make that role even more effective within your space. And Paul, your perspective as a CIO and what's coming down the track, it's really fascinating, this space. And I thank you again for your time on this. So, and I look forward to speaking to you again, because I think there's a huge amount still that we can unpack. So it'll be good to have you on another occasion very soon, and we can talk about other aspects of this.
Thanks, Jivan. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Jivan.
Thank you again. Take care, guys. So what a thought-provoking discussion. AI isn't just changing corporate workplaces, it's reshaping how the non-profits recruit, advocate, and operate. But as Paul and Jack point out, technology is only as good as the values behind it. So what are some of the key takeaways from today's episode? AI can drive efficiency in HR, allowing organizations to do more with less. But privacy and ethics must be front and center, especially in human rights work. Technology should complement and not replace human interaction. And finally, collaboration is key. Non-profits need to work together to shape ethical AI adoption. So what are your thoughts? Is AI an enabler of progress, or a challenge we need to keep in check? Let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on LinkedIn or drop me a message. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. Keep championing that positive change in the workplace. And remember, every workplace can be transformed when we challenge the bad and celebrate the good. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with some more HR hacks, and together we can polish some HR halos. See ya.